Next, we have Carlos Martinez, who is the first Hispanic elected public defender in the U.S. He is Miami-Dade County's public defender, elected in 2008 and reelected in 12, 16, and 20 without opposition. Mr. Martinez manages an office with $33 million budget, comprised of approximately 400 employees, handling approximately 70,000 cases per year. Just as importantly, Mr. Martinez currently serves on the National Association of Public Defense Executive Committee and is a member of the Council on Criminal Justice. He was the chairperson of the Indigent Advisory Group of the American Bar Association Standing Committee on Legal Aid and Indigent Defendants and served on SCLAID. He was a member of the Institute for Innovation in Prosecution, executive session on rethinking the role of the prosecutor in the community. He serves on the Florida Bar's Commission on the Legal Needs of Children, 2 Supreme Court of Florida steering committees, the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice Zero Tolerance Task Force, and as the government lawyer liaison to the Florida Bar's Board of Governors. So thank you, Mr. Martinez, for coming tonight.
Thank you for the invitation. And I may just jump around and have a conversation because I think it's really important for you all to know, number one, what the consequences are. And the consequences are extremely serious. And it's not just the sentence that a young person could get, but it's also being able to get scholarships. It also impacts their ability to get employment. It also impacts ability to get benefits in the future. So there are a lot of serious consequences of an arrest, even a misdemeanor arrest. So, I want to jump in to Council Member Laredo, because I think you brought up the point of prosecution. So one of the great things in Miami-Dade County is that our state attorney has been around for a long time. And she was the one that piloted in the entire United States something called civil citation. Why did she create civil citation? Civil citation is an alternative to an arrest. An arrest is going to stay with that child. When the arrest happened, the kid is fingerprinted. Those fingerprints not only go to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they go to the FBI. So even if the record in Florida is wiped out, which there are multiple ways to wipe out, if that kid ever applies to the military, if that kid ever applies to a federal job in law enforcement or in other areas of federal employment, that kid may actually not get clearance. So there are a lot of issues, even from low-level misdemeanor arrests. Now, I started speaking about Ms. Rundle. Ms. Rundle set up the civil citation program, which is an alternative to actually booking the kid, fingerprinting the kid, and getting the kid into the juvenile system, which, I'm sorry, the best way to call it is a baby criminal system, right? We call it juvenile. We use a lot of language that kind of minimizes the seriousness, but it's a very serious thing. So she created civil citation to give the kids at least one shot, one free shot on a low-level case. You get one free shot. If it happens again, then there are other opportunities to either be prosecuted in juvenile court or find other options. The other thing that works really well in Miami-Dade County and why crime has gone way down for juveniles, I did not realize that you're having a serious problem. Because when you look across the county, juvenile crime is down. But one of the other things that we have in Miami-Dade County that is very good is when a kid, let's say it's not the civil citation, because civil citation, the police department can actually bring the parents in and say, your kid did this, and in order for your kid not to be prosecuted in court through civil citation, through the juvenile system, your kid has to do, for example, 10 hours of community service, or you have to pay X dollar amount in order for this case to be over and done with. With Miami-Dade County, there's something called the Juvenile Assessment Center. What happens at the Juvenile Assessment Center? Let's say you have one of the kids here that is running around with one of the golf carts and the kid is blocking traffic or worse, engaging in other behavior that is criminal behavior. If that kid is arrested and taken to the Juvenile Assessment Center, they will process the arrest, but they will bring the parents in. So, in terms of deterrence, particularly, I know your community is a somewhat affluent community. So, and I know people in affluent situations, their time is really important. So parents would not like to have to go down to a juvenile assessment center or to be part of an assessment that they would do of the kid and the family. So that's what happens if you have the juvenile court process in court. In terms of who gets prosecuted, Mr. Dunn was speaking about the most serious end of the cases, homicides, on cases where a kid held somebody up with a firearm or carjacking. That's the direct file system where a kid is then considered to be transferred to adult court and prosecuted as an adult. But I think the situation that has been told to me of the things that you're facing here, they're more of the low-level cases, and sometimes that could rise to other cases. So let me jump to the aspect of prosecution. The prosecution really depends on the witnesses who show up in court. I cannot tell you, I'm sure they could, from the state attorney's office, they could tell you how many cases they've had to dismiss because the witness doesn't show up. So an important aspect of who gets prosecuted and what happens with the case, it depends on the witnesses. So if you have that situation here where you have kids getting in trouble, kids committing offenses, and the kids get prosecuted, just make sure the witnesses show up, because otherwise the cases get dismissed because there are time frames for the cases and you require evidence for the cases. In terms of consequences, the arrest records are public record if it's a felon. So even if you're in juvenile court, if a kid gets arrested, for example, for grand theft is anything over $750. So if a kid goes and steals something that's beyond $750, that arrest is going to be public. So if anybody wants to look up that arrest in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they're going to find it. It's a public record. The juvenile case, the lower level misdemeanor case, like, for example, criminal mischief. Let's say the damage done was $100, right? That's a criminal mischief. That's a misdemeanor. That under Florida law is considered confidential. So you would not be able to see that juvenile record of the misdemeanor arrest. But for the felonies, it's a public record. So that's one of the consequences. I had an attorney, now forgive me because of COVID, my time is so way off that it could have been 15 years ago, but it feels like 6 years ago that it happened. But we had an attorney that was starting in our office. The attorney had gotten clearance from the Florida bar, had been admitted into the Florida bar after a lengthy investigation. You know what problem he had? He could not get an apartment in Miami Beach. Why? All those leasing companies do a background check. So his arrest record as a juvenile was still on his record. Why? A lot of these big companies, national companies, they obtain criminal records and they go ahead and sell those records. So even if you end up getting the case dismissed, even if you end up getting the case sealed to the public, it is still available from a lot of private companies. So there are a lot of consequences. So when there are issues where, and it's a push and pull, because you have the consequences have been so severe for so long that in Miami-Dade County, with police departments and throughout the state, we've really had to go back and forth trying to figure out what's going to be accountability and how much can we look at rehabilitation. So it's a push and pull because the consequences are so severe and so long. It also impacts the ability to get into college. Another story. This one is not a public defender client. This one is a girl. Both parents are doctors, and both parents, obviously, she went to private school. They did a lot of things to make sure her future was paved so that she could sail, because she was a very smart girl. She's a woman now, but she was a very smart girl. However, she did something really stupid. They went with other girls to purchase dresses for prom at Bloomingdale's. But what did they do at Bloomingdale's? Even though they had credit cards, and this particular girl had cash on her, that her parents gave her cash as a gift for her prom, for her to pay for her dress. What do you think she did? She stole the dress. She stole the dress. So I never found out, by the way, because, she was processed through a Juvenile Assessment Center. She was given a diversion program, which meant she did not get the juvenile delinquency treatment. And she did all the things she had to do to make sure she would get that case off her record. Except when she applied to college. Florida has a lot of really good state colleges. And she applied to one of them. And when she answered the question on the FAFSA, which is the Florida Financial Aid type of application, one of the questions is, have you ever been arrested for a felony? Arrested, not convicted, arrested. That girl, instead, it's an online application, and the word felony is hyperlinked. If you click on the word felony, a pop-up comes up and tells you it is not a felony if it was a juvenile case. She didn't click on that. So when they asked her, have you ever been arrested? She was truthful. She answers yes. So what happened? This girl had, I know GPAs now are not what they used to be when I went to school. Now kids have like 5.0 and stuff like that. Really high GPA, really high SAT score, really high ranking in her class. She was either number one or number two. All these things were great. And all of a sudden, the parents received a letter from the university telling her she has been waitlisted. And they were shocked because normally it's almost automatic admission if you have those credentials. However, this is when I found out that the state of Florida system waitlist all the kids who answer that. They waitlisted. It doesn't matter how great their credentials are. They waitlist the kids so they can investigate that case and they can investigate that charge. The reason I'm telling you that long story is, even if you have done as parents all the things you need to do to make sure your kid does the right thing and your kid learns a lesson, there are lessons out there that could have long-term consequences, even of arresting a kid and take him to the juvenile center, particularly when it's a felony. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just telling you that there are a lot of consequences that flow from getting involved in juvenile delinquency, in getting the arrest done, in getting the process done. So the issue is going to have to be is how are you going to be able to work that out in your community so that you are getting the message out that, look, we're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. And then you do whatever, whatever it is that you need to do. You may have to get creative. You may have to figure out some way legally. Your attorney's not here, but you may have to figure out a way. Is there something that you can do with a parent? Because in some of the cases, if there's no parental supervision, like for example, on the golf cart situation where you have 6, 7, or 8 kids in a golf cart intended for 4, the kid has no driver's license, or the kid is old enough to have a permit, but there's no adult in the golf cart, that's still a violation of your code right now. So you may want to be thinking about, are you going to have some consequences for the owner of a golf cart? And once you do some of those things, you may get a different result of parents taking more responsibility for what it is that their kids are doing. But it affects military, it affects ability to get scholarships. There are a lot of impacts. Some of them are longer term than others. And there's one side impact that a lot of people don't realize. If you disrupt the kid's education because the kid gets arrested, and let's say the kid got arrested on a felony, kid goes to the detention center, it is possible the kid all of a sudden has a new peer group that is not the peer group that they had, and you thought it was bad because of things that we're doing here. There are a lot worse peer groups around this town. And so that's a challenge, and that's something that you all have to take into consideration when you're looking at what are your arrest policies, what are your policies for disposition on these cases, and are there other things that you can do to try to force the hand of parents who may be contributing to some of this. I did a lot of things as a kid that if my parents knew. My mom's still alive, so I'm not revealing anything while she's alive. But there were a lot of things that I did that, they were very strict, Catholic. But I still did stupid things. And thank God I did not get arrested, because if I had gotten arrested, I would not be your public defender today. It just would not have happened. So when you're looking at what policies, what discretion you want the police to have, that's one of the things. Thank you. That's your former mayor who just reminded me to make sure that I mentioned immigration. There are immigration consequences. There are so many immigration consequences that we do regular trainings in our office. And the short PowerPoint, we've been able to get it to 41 slides. So you can imagine, it is tremendous what can happen with immigration, including people who have a visa, whether it's travel visa, whether it's a work visa, whether they're lawful permanent residents, and they want to make sure that their kids become a citizen or that the family becomes a citizen. There are certain provisions of federal law, of immigration law, that would be precluded if the kid is adjudicated delinquent. So there's a lot of information that a lot of folks don't have. And a lot of times, by the time we get to advise a client, and particularly a child and their parent, it's almost too late, because the ball has gotten rolling on the consequences of that arrest and whatever the court involvement is.
Wow.
So I don't know if you all had any questions.
Well, no, I appreciate, I think everybody really, that's what we need. We need people in this community to really understand that there are serious, significant consequences to these kids' actions. I understand what you're saying, that we have to weigh the impact, but at the same time, they've got to understand that there are real ramifications potentially if they get involved in these things. A golf cart is worth, other than mine, is worth more than $750. So I think it's a serious crime. People think it's a lark, but it can be charged as a crime.
And I'm sorry, because there's something that I did forget. I looked at the list of crimes. The list of crimes keeps getting longer. But there are a lot of crimes that kids, it may not be what's happening on Crandon Boulevard. There may be other things that are happening online.
Right.
There's electronic thefts. Electronic threats, and all sorts of things that really people have to get educated, particularly parents. Florida law has gotten really bad because there are really serious things going on with kids threatening violence or to have a gun or to bully some kid online. But there are a lot of those things that if you want at a future time, I'm willing to come and help out and give detailed information on some of those crimes, because a lot of people don't even realize that some of those things are crimes in effect. And I know I'm going to volunteer my friend Todd Bass in the state attorney's office. They would also be able to identify a whole list of crimes that are common crimes that juveniles get arrested for, just as a way of educating, your residents here.
I appreciate it. Councilmember Laredo, I think you had something to say.
I'm seldom left speechless, but your presentation is absolutely incredible, Your Honor. I appreciate that, and I would make a motion with the clerk, or this has to be clipped out, Madam Clerk, or Mr. Manager, and put on the very top of our website. Any parent who doesn't get it after this presentation, by the way, thank you for speaking in plain English instead of the legalistic. It said, I am just so happy that you came, because you people have to understand that this is not playing around, and we need to get over a lot of areas, including some cultural gaps. But we are, we are moving into zero tolerance, because we tried the other thing, Your Honor. When it doesn't work,
Please call me Carlos.
Well, I respect you because you're an elected official and a great public servant.
Thank you.
And so I'm honored to call you Your Honor.
All right.
I think it speaks for itself. I think we should make it on our website so they can click just for his presentation, not the follow-up. It really is.
We don't need a motion. I think we just direct the manager to take care of that. Thank you. But I agree. Did you want to say something, Councilmember Lennon? Okay. Anybody else? Oh, Councilmember McCormick?
I really like
wait, I don't.
She likes to complicate things.
my prerogative.
It's your prerogative. It was her birthday last week.
Can I go?
Okay, I think I can hear you, hopefully.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I want to thank you for coming and for the directness of your presentation. This is the second time, for people who don't know, that you've come and done one of these talks for us. I was there the first time with one of my kids, and I will be making all of them rewatch tonight's meeting. But what I really wanted to add was, this has been my night of echoing Councilmember Laredo. I love his idea of trying to put something together. And if I could just add and ask the rest of council for our direction to the manager, we could see if the communications department can maybe put together clips of it that we could even send out to, work a lot with the PTAs in our local school, and some of the parent WhatsApp chats, I think, is often a great way to reach parents in our community. So if we could maybe collectively ask Steve if he could try to work on something like that, I'd be happy to help disseminate that information in some of the chats and work with the PTAs.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, sir. Very much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you to Mr. Bass and Mr. Dunn for your time. We really appreciate it. We'll probably be calling upon you as well. So thank you, Myra, for working with them.